Karl Staib, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited as well. So, we always ask the very first question. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
What is the number one most important strategy for growing your business?
Oh man, there's so many. As you know, I'm a systems guy, right? So I have a
Yes.
podcast called Systematic Leader. We before we hit record, talk about how much you learn from other people and it's the little things, right? And as you've noticed, probably through your career, the people you like working with often do the little things well. They pay attention to things or they follow up, and same thing with car salesmen and working with a website guy or whatever it is. There's people that you just like. They communicate well. And I think to me, it's proactive communication. And that to me, and it's setting those up. So let's say people in the audience who are listening, they have employees or they have an assistant, whatever it is. What I often do is like we'll go through a workflow. Okay, how does this work? What are you doing? What are they doing? What is that back and forth? And often what I found is a lot of leaders are chasing down information. And like you said, like you have a company that helps you with podcasting, right? And they help you edit. And so if you have it set up where you're like, hey, is this done yet? Or, you're following up and it's not a proactive response from them, then that sucks up more of your time, more of your bandwidth. You've got to say, oh, yeah, I got to check in with them. Or, where's this at? The idea is to try to make things as proactive and automated as possible. And that to me is where you save so much time, you get more consistency, and then you can start to see where systems are broken or where they're working well and where you can double down.
I love that answer, and I agree. There's a lot of time wasters for sure. Tell me though, how can what are some of the things I can do to improve my business and to decrease time wasters?
Yeah. So, like, we'll go back to the employee story. So, for myself, like, I have an assistant and she helps me a lot with LinkedIn, helps me with emails, scheduling. I do a lot myself, but I'm trying to, as the business grows, trying to then say, okay, take on some of these things. And I think what happens with a lot of small business owners is they say, okay, I've developed it, I've done it this way, and they're used to it. And their brain is wired for this system. But as you grow, as you take on new responsibilities, you're going to have to offload them or eliminate them. And often that to me is where systems, like looking at them and kind of reviewing them on a regular basis, is so important, because what ends up happening then, like, you might do great with your assistant for the first 6 months and then things start falling through the cracks. This is a very common story I have with a lot of my clients or employees. Like if you have a marketing director or if you have anybody, somebody help you with sales, the idea then is proactively creating a system that allows them to give you updates where you're not chasing things down. You're not finding all this stuff out in a one-on-one, being surprised. So if you're in a one-on-one and you're finding out, which is good, one-on-one should occur, but most of the things that they share with you should already know. And then you're there to coach them and guide them versus find out about it, understand what the problem is, and then maybe from there coach. Or even if you have enough time, sometimes you're like, okay, well, keep me updated on this, right? But if you have that proactive system, so people who are listening, if you have employees or you have contractors or even customers, I find having, try to create proactive communication, have people give you updates, right? And it can be super simple and super small. So if you have an employee that's working with you, what you do is you say, okay, what we've been doing is this. You map it out. This is the way things have been working. Do you feel like anything's broken? Do you feel like anything's not working well? And of course, there's always something, a communication breakdown. There's always things that fall through the cracks. And that's nature of being human, right? You forget things, you got a lot on your plate, but you go through it together. And this is the thing when people are thinking about building systems or improving them, it's really important to think about doing it with people because that will help you get buy in. But what ends up happening is you go through that and then you say, well, how can we make this better? What can we do to help each other out? And, and if it's a new employee and they have no idea what's going on, then you have a little bit more probably freedom to then say, hey, let's do it this way. This is the way I like to work. And this is the expectations. And that's so important. If people should write that down, really have clear expectations. Now, and this is I think where there's a lot of gaps is you might think you have clear expectations, but a lot of times you don't. And this is why creating feedback loops is so important. But we can talk about feedback loops in a little bit. But the idea is to sit down and say, okay, this is the way we're doing things. What can we do to improve this process? And what can we do to help each other? And often what ends up is trying to help, of course, the leader get more proactive with the information that they're getting. And this can be as simple as what's working well for the employee and what's not, and where are they getting stuck? Where's the bottlenecks for them? Because as an employer, you can help them remove those bottlenecks. And then as you look through those systems, what you do is you say, oh, okay, like this is happening here, this is happening here. Let's try it this. And this is the iterative process. So I worked with a client and we kind of went through this step by step. And I said, okay, when you meet with them, talk through these things. And it was funny because, he was just like, I just want them to do their effing job, right? And I'm like, yes, yeah, of course but it's just as important to help give them guardrails of what's working well for you and what's not. And this is that where I think a lot of people struggle too, coming back to feedback loops, is giving that person feedback of what's working and what's not for them. So in this case, this employee, what you say is, okay, let's try it like this. Let's say, every Friday morning by 10 a.m., you give me an update. You tell me what's working well, you tell me what's not working well, and what you're doing to improve this situation, this project, right? Where's the bottlenecks? And if they're like, oh, I'm, trying this, I tried this software, it's not working, that might be an easy fix. And you'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'm also coaching Jane or I'm also coaching Tom, and they're doing it like this. You're like, do you think that might be easier? And this is where I think you start to get that proactive feedback, which makes it easier to coach them because you're finding out before it. So when you do meet one-on-one, you can say how are things working versus what's happening across the board. You can ask specific questions, and back to those details that we talked about at the beginning. As a leader, you're looking for those little details. You're paying attention to those little details. The employee realizes it, the employee feels heard, and that creates the type of culture where everybody's on the same page versus my boss is an idiot or doesn't know what's going on. Because you have this system in place. Every Friday morning, they give you this feedback, and it might be project related, and I would suggest, probably keeping it mostly project related and then keeping the one-on-ones, making those a little more personal, where you're hearing about their day and their lives.
I like that. It's really, really some great ideas for sure. Let me ask you this: how about feedback? To give you an example, let's say you tell the employee to, respond by say 10 o'clock every Friday, and they
Yep.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach them? Because obviously there are some people who just put the hammer down. There's some that are just really, really nice. There's some people that use the sandwiching technique. What do you recommend?
Yeah. Okay, so the sandwiching, everybody's different, and this is what's important to think about as people are listening, everybody has a different personality, right? So if you're the type of person that struggles giving feedback to somebody, sandwiching technique works well. You give them a positive, you tell them what's broken, and then you end on a positive, right?
Hmm.
You bring the hammer down, like, you better do this. That to me is fails more often than not. People hate being told what to do. This is that importance of creating those processes and doing them with that employee. And it doesn't have to be you. Like, let's say you're the CEO of, 55 employees, whatever it is, 100 employees. You don't need to be the one that helps them figure all this out. And I think this is really important. They should be the ones figuring it out. They should be, and you're helping plant seeds. You're getting this feedback. This is broken. This is where it's bottlenecked. And you're not telling them how to fix it. Maybe you are. Maybe you're saying use this other software in that previous example. But you can also say, okay, well, what else have you tried? And this is that, I think, important part about being a leader. And I think the world has changed a lot, right? The hammer approach probably worked well in the 60s, 70s, maybe into the 80s. And then things started shifting in the 90s and the aughts. And then with the pandemic, everything just shifted, right? Uh, and that really makes leaders, and this is kind of that constant improvement idea, is like, even as a leader, you can't keep doing things the way you've done them. So you, and this is a James Clear quote, basically just the idea is improve by 1% a day. And that's, even for me, that's too much. Like, even 1% of one thing per day, right? Okay, so here's a quick little system that people can use. So if you are a type of boss that likes to bring the hammer down, or you really are, strict, and they're not doing what you want to do, you have to show that you're listening and you're empathetic to what they're going through. Because I don't know how many people have worked for terrible bosses, probably most of us. I've worked for some terrible bosses. They didn't care. They just wanted you to do the job. They didn't care about you. So you just feel like a number. You feel like, what's the point? And often when hey, don't send that report on a Friday, then nothing happens to you, right? So you're like, oh, I don't have to do this extra thing. This is not really mandatory. So this comes back to that consistency and paying attention to the small details. So if you're a leader, you say 10 o'clock, I need this by 10 o'clock every Friday. They don't do it. You get curious. Okay, what happened? Like, this is important. This is an expectation that we expect of everybody that reports to me. And if you don't, you have to have a good reason why. Hey, maybe you're sick. Maybe you got the flu. I don't expect you to get out of bed, send me a report on, Friday at 9 o'clock, whatever it is, right? So you get curious. You find out what's going on. Right there, you are ahead of 95% of most bosses when you do that, right? Most bosses are busy. They don't really have time to find out why you didn't send the report. They just get mad, and then they double down on, making you feel small for not doing this thing. So the idea is to get curious. Then the next part is how you saying, okay, well, what will work for you? Because this is an expectation. This standard is not going to change. So if 10 o'clock doesn't work for you, what does? Hey, maybe it's Thursday afternoon by 5, right? Pretty much the same thing, because it's, Friday morning, whatever. But this is a key part, is if you do this and you institute this system, the idea then is giving, and coming back to feedback loops, giving them feedback. So you're closing that, you're listening, you get this email or you get this Slack message, whatever you use, or text, whatever, you read it, and then you reply back. And that's probably a big mistake. A lot of people are like, well, they gave me the feedback. I read it. I know what's going on. Great. Thanks. I'm too busy to reply back to you. what you're also saying is, I'm too busy to actually read this. So they think, oh, I sent it, nothing happened. So let's see what happens if I don't send it. I don't have to do this extra thing each week that takes me 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't know, maybe depending on the type of information you're asking for. It might only take 10, but whatever, it's still extra compared to what they probably had to do before. So then the idea is, okay, if it's, if they're not, if you don't respond back, then they're like, oh, I can get away with this. And like we know, give anybody an inch, they'll take a yard, whatever it is, a meter. And the idea then is, okay, and now phase three is, if they continue not doing it, then it's a, okay, are they a right fit for this role? Maybe not. And that's where it gets difficult. And a lot of people leaders give up because it's like, do I really want to deal with the pain of like telling them they're not living up to expectations, putting them on some sort of performance plan? And this is where having a system in place, and you let them know in advance, right? You say, if you don't send me this, this is the consequence. First time, you get a warning. Second time, you get another warning. Third time, some penalty of some kind. Depending on your personality, you could say third time you're fired. Third time you get demoted. I don't know. Everybody's different. Everybody has different HR rules, different restrictions. But the idea is to have consequences in place, because if there's no consequences to this, and as well as appreciation, right? Because if you are actually saying thank you, here's a reply back, oh, this is great, thank you for doing this part, right? You gives you a chance to appreciate them, because they they send it to you at 9:45 on Friday morning. You read it and you promise them you don't have to reply back in the first hour, but you say, by 4 o'clock on Friday, I will give you a response. And this consistency, there's attention to details, because if it sits in there, now I get, if you're sick, if you have the flu and they send the report and you don't respond back, then on Saturday morning or Monday morning or whatever it is, when you start feeling better, say, sorry, I read this. Here, I had the flu. I was out of commission, but here's what I thank you for this reply. And here's some feedback for you. What you're doing is setting that consistent standard every single week, so they understand they've got to do this thing, or there's consequences for not.
I 100% agree. You said a lot in the sense of I think we see a lot. You and I have a lot of opinions exactly the same. And I used to be a nursing home administrator, and I used to go into nursing homes that had some problems.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about systems and how they connect here in a few seconds. I want your opinion on that. But we have a problem, and I used to always tell my department heads, consistency is very important. We're all
Mm-hmm.
going to make mistakes. We're all going to forget things, but consistent. And then you had to be consistent with me, and you had to be consistent with staff, because then
Mm-hmm.
they'll be consistent with you. And you
Yep.
can't let one get away with something. And the second thing I really agree with is the curious. I had my first business when I was 18 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
I used to just bring that hammer down. And as
Mm-hmm.
time went on, I learned, that's just not the best. And sometimes when you're just curious for a minute and ask them questions, you actually get an answer and save a very awkward conversation when it's a simple, oh, I got why you did that. And you
Yeah.
move on versus bringing the hammer down. And now you have all these problems. So I love what you did just say. That is advice I agree with as well.
Yeah.
Um, but let's talk a little about systems, how they and do they connect? What's your thoughts? Do systems connect? Do they not connect? Thoughts on that?
Oh, very much they should connect. Yeah, because everything is reliant on anything sales process, right? Take that lead in. Um, what's their response back? Is it an automated email? Is it a personalized email from a salesperson? Do they get it within a certain amount of time? Then same thing with an employee. When a new employee is hired, what is that? that onboarding system that really gets them up to speed, understands the culture of the company, understands the cadence of meetings and communication style, and the overall culture of what the company is and the mission they're on. So yeah, I think they're very connected. There are, and I often find the silos are the toughest part. Like accounting doesn't talk with marketing, and sales doesn't talk with the maybe the guys that install whatever product that you have, whatever it is, right? And that lack of communication is a systems issue. It's not a people issue. And that comes back to, hey, when you do this thing, when you finish this thing, you have to plug it into the computer. You've got to send an email, whatever that is, that allows those people to connect and understand how those things work together.
No, I do agree. Go back to the nursing home for a minute. I used to go into the nursing home, and when I did, I'm like, well, what's wrong? And they're like, well, you have a clinical issue. You have a nursing issue. They're not doing this right.
Mhm.
And I would gather some information, and I'd find out, no, you have a much bigger system problem. These systems are together, they connect. And so, like, well,
Mhm.
what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you understand that if nursing isn't doing their job, we'll say, and they're getting, sick patients are going back to the hospital from nursing home, that affects your admission slash sales team of getting new admissions. Do you
Mhm.
understand that affects your financial picture? Less people in the nursing home, less money you bring in.
Mhm.
And as we started talking through this, they're like, oh. And so then we used to have a department head meeting, and they'd all come in at different times. 8 o'clock meeting, and one comes in 8:05, one comes in 8:10, one leaves early. And I'm like, listen, we're all busy, but we need to be on the same team. Don't have silos. And once they started getting that, yes, we really, housekeeping, I mean, everything worked well together,
Mhm.
that the nursing home drastically improved. But it's hard to get your employees with the buy in and all working together and
Yep.
communicating and doing all the things you recommend. But it's hard sometimes. But if you can get people to do that, there's a major change really quickly happens. Agree?
Yes, that's a great example. Yeah, because often, I think what I've learned and I struggled with is positive intent. I think as a leader, we have often more energy than employees because we are so invested in the company. And this is that's to me is why mission, vision, and core values are so important to make a part of your regular routines and systems so people understand why they're doing what they're doing, but then connect them to other people and how this matters. From, like you said, the nurses, they'll let the staff know when someone's discharged, and then they can then say, oh, or going to be discharged, right? Because they can start that sales process earlier, right? If they know within 3 days, that person's going to just get discharged, you can start that versus waiting till they're discharged. Those systems are so important and they all tie together. But then it's letting the team know, because as you are improving, you say, hey, guess what? We've been able to close the gap of rooms being empty for as long as they are, from 3 days down to 1.5 days, down to half a day, right? And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, that matters. And this connects. And then everybody feels like what they're doing has purpose versus doing things in a vacuum.
I love. Actually, Carl, I don't usually do this, but I'm saying say that again because I think that the last couple sentences you said is very valuable. What did you just say? Tell me again,
Yeah,
please.
so you give that feedback back to people and show them the value of the work that they're doing, so they see how everything's connected and how it's a team effort. Because in the end, if they understand how everything's connected, they feel like they're a part of something and not doing things in a vacuum.
I do. Sincerely, I love that. I love that for sure. Well, I think you definitely gave the listening community a lot of some great insights. So let me ask you this: what is one challenge our listener community can help you solve?
Oh man. I think some of the challenges I've had is really explaining how all systems, to your point, should be connected, right? Because I think people are so used to doing things the way they do them. It's hard for get it's hard to get people to change, right? And I think, you know, as you are building your company and you're trying to make these improvements, it's about changing one thing at a time, not changing 10 things. Yes, there might be 10 things broken, but where are you going to be able to drive the most value? Where are you going to really, help the most people internally and customers, right? So all the employees as well as the customers, because that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And so for me, it's really explaining that and sharing that, because I think as I've developed this company, I've tried different things and some things don't stick. And so, what I've struggled with is the idea of creating magnetic operational systems that people actually want to use. They are drawn to them because, like you with the nurse says, "Hey, this patient's being discharged in 3 days." Salespeople are like, "Cool, I'm on it." And those type of systems, and because those communications happening more often, they're drawn to these things because my feeling is most people have good intent. They want the company to do well. They often get frustrated because maybe they haven't been heard or they haven't really been felt like they are cared about inside the company. But they want to do well. They want to do well for the customer. It's empowering them to do that. So for me, it's really understanding how to, I guess, frame it so my customers, my clients understand the value of doing, because this is the thing, right? You have to slow down the speed up, and that's what systems forces people. And people don't want to slow down because they're already so busy. They're like, how can I slow down? I have trouble keeping up as is. And that's where I'm like, okay, yeah, you need to slow down. You need to smooth out some of these systems, and then you can speed up, because now, if like proactive communication, you are so much further ahead and doing less chasing down of things, and you're saving time, but you have to implement that system and then turn it into a habit for everybody on the team.
Love it. Love it for sure. So I think the first half of the show we learned from you and we learned a lot. You gave some great insights, so I appreciate that. The second half, I'm going to learn more about you personally. So take me back in time when little Carl, did you know you'd be running and growing a company?
I've always had the desire to run my own company. I think from a young kid, I've been entrepreneurial. My dad was an entrepreneur. He was an electrician, owned his
Mm,
own electrical business for 40 years. My brother took it over when he passed. And for me, what I found is I just always have this desire to build something. And that's why I love systems, right? Because you can't build something without systems. And so uh, I sold, bought and sold baseball cards. I still have a bunch to this day. I sold, I hunted, not really, I guess you could say hunted. I basically searched for mushrooms in my parents. I lived out in the country, about an hour and a half outside of Philadelphia. And these wild mushrooms called chanterelles would grow, and
mm.
I would go around through the forest. As in the summer when it rained a lot and it was humid, these mushrooms would grow. I take them to restaurants, Mike, because that's what my dad did. He took a bucket to a restaurant, and and this was, I think I was like 18 years old, and I was like, wait, he got a gift card, and I was like, you got a gift card? That means I could probably get cash. So
Mm.
I went around hunting for mushrooms, and one summer, in about a week, I made like $1,500.
Wow.
And this was, I'm an old man now. I'm 48, so That was like, 30
Yeah,
years ago. And so, to me, it's like that has always been within me. And that's why I love helping entrepreneurs, because it's like, I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to build a company. And that's why I love the work that I do.
that's excellent. I love $1,500 in a week. Not bad for sure.
I know, especially for like, I was like 19 at the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's not bad. So tell me a little about your company, your current company. Tell me a little bit about it. What do you do?
Yeah. So I help people map out their systems. Like I said, I'm still working on my tagline, but basically helping people create magnetic operational systems so the company's streamlined. And the idea is mapping out people's systems. And this is so much fun. It's basically redesigning people's systems, very much like you. You ask questions, you find out where are their bottlenecks, what's going on, why is this not working as well as you want it to work, and then where they can start to offload, like delegate, automate, bring in AI. That to me is where it gets really fun, when you can, email comes in from a customer, AI can review it now and distribute it to the appropriate person. And that to me is like, now you've reduced headcount because you don't have anybody that has to take these emails in all day long and look at them, and you probably have multiple responsibilities. Now AI can do that. There are so many different things that you can do from a systems perspective, that really help a company. And kind of what we talked about with creating that proactive feedback. One thing I've found, and this is from an old mentor of mine. This is a really cool system. So as you go throughout your week, right? And here's a little bit of research. Most people, about 85% of employees, don't feel appreciated enough in their role.
Hmm.
And when you flip it and you ask the leaders at these companies, do they give enough appreciation? 85% will say, yes, I give enough appreciation. So there is a huge gap, right? So 15% don't feel like 15% actually feel appreciated, and 85% of leaders think they're giving enough. So
Hmm.
right, is that 70% gap difference?
Yeah.
So this is a system that anybody can apply. Doesn't matter if you have just contractors or you run a small business. The idea is throughout your week, write down the things that you're grateful for about others. And this was something that I struggled with for the longest time, because, you expect people to do a good job. You expect them to do the thing, right? But when you take the time to say thank you and you show appreciation, even if you're just a parent, right? And you take more time, your kid takes time to empty the dishwasher, thank them and tell them, hey, that saved me, some time. I really appreciate it. I'm lucky to have you as a son or a daughter or whatever. But the idea throughout the week, if an employee does well on a project, they help with a last minute request. A client says, hey, I want this change on my website, and they do it, they knock it out within just a couple hours or whatever. Write that down. And then on Thursday afternoons, and this is that system, at 4:15, whatever, doesn't matter, 4, 3:30, 4, 4:30. The idea is to have it blocked on your calendar for a half hour. Go back through your notes and say, oh, Tom did this well. Amy did this well. And send them, could be a text, it could be a Slack, it could be an email, whatever, a quick little message that lands in their inbox and makes them feel good. And that will be huge. That will be so life changing for so many entrepreneurs and small business owners. They will realize how much appreciation means to people. Just that little bit of a system that probably could take at the most maybe less than, half hour, 40 minutes each week. You think, as somebody does something, you just write it down. Or maybe if you really need to, a system for the end of the day on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, the appreciation goes out. But Monday through Wednesday, you write these things down, and that will change the whole culture of your team. And it's just appreciation. It's don't try to say, hey, can you also do this for me? The whole message is just appreciation. That system will be life changing for you and the people that you work with.
I love that, and honestly, I'm going to put that into my life because that is actually very excellent advice. And I try to do that already, but I think it's very. I like it. I like it for sure. Is there any ideal client or industries you're looking for, or that you work with?
Yeah, it's usually about, 10 plus employee companies. When it gets harder, communication often breaks down. Things are maybe people are getting busier and busier, work picks up. It's those type of businesses that want to get more streamlined, more automated, more clear with, that their communication, and how to create those systems. Those are those companies, and I often, work in tech industry. I have a law firm that I've worked with. I worked with a music institute, and then a bunch of hardware stores. All those hardware stores are. How do you create those systems so everybody's on the same page?
Yes, interesting for sure. So I know you mentioned the podcast. Tell me a little about your podcast. What's the name of it, and tell me a little about it.
Yeah, it's called Systematic Leader. It's on all the platforms, Apple, Spotify. I've got a little channel on YouTube just under my name, Karl with a K, Staib. But it's basically just bringing leaders on. And it's been a master class in education around systems. But basically, I asked them how do they use systems to run their business? What are they doing? From automation to AI to delegation to communication. I interviewed one woman, and it's up on my YouTube. But what she does to really help people gel around the mission is she and the core values. What she does is every Monday morning, she has the team share how the company or how they've noticed the company living out its core values.
Hmm.
And so throughout the week, you are intentionally looking for ways that the company's living. And it could be a coworker that you're like, oh, yeah, what if it's attention to detail or excellence or whatever it is? And then you give that example. I saw Jamie do this, or, I noticed when my customer needed this that, I did this thing. I found that so useful. I've shared that with so many different clients, and now they use that, and it helps everybody gel around the mission and the vision and the core values of the company. And it really makes a huge difference because now people are looking for those things and understanding the core values and how to live those core values more and more as they do the work that they do.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good too. The podcast gave you an idea, so that's always
Yeah,
good,
oh
huh?
yeah, all the time. Yeah, it's
That's excellent.
fantastic.
Right. So let me transition to another question here. If you could go back in time and meet yourself the day you founded your company,
Mm.
what advice would you give yourself?
Do a better job of tracking work, and to me, this is a systems things. And it's funny, like you know, there's some areas I'm really good at looking at systems, mapping them out, um, kind of helping understand what people are going through. But I don't do it for myself as well as I should. Like
Yeah.
I'm busy. I'm like, okay, I got to do all these things. Um, and I've intentionally just recently started to slow down, and I'm using AI to help coach me. So I'm like, okay, I have
Mm,
this particular issue. And so any you from Gemini, which is Google's, to ChatGPT, there's an audio function because sometimes you're not. I don't want to be in front of screens typing, which I do a lot throughout the day. So maybe I'll go for a walk, or I'll just kind of walk around my room. But I'll just say, hey, I'm working on this problem. How can I improve this system? And then it will give me ideas. And the idea for me is just making some time to slow down. Like I've talked about earlier, right? You got to slow down the speed up. And
yeah,
when you use that tool, that chat GPT, it gives you fresh ideas. And I think this is like a lot of times once I get people up and running with improving their systems, then that's a system that you can incorporate and it can help you. It can be the mini version of me. Like I will say, hey, let's create a personalized chat GPT that's all around, you developing your systems and improving them.
yeah.
And that's been fantastic because I'm doing a better job of outreach. Like I'll forget, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I have all these people that I had been in contact with and never really followed up with. And I'm like, okay, I'm the systems guy, and so we all struggle, right? And like,
Hmm.
so I'm working in that area.
Yeah. I like it. I like the honesty too, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what do you do outside of work? I know you have a couple kids, but what do you do outside of work?
Yeah, I'm married. I have a 15-year-old and a 10-year-old. So yeah, they're the main things, right? Playing with them. Like later this afternoon, I have a call at 2:30. I have a client call, but after that, I'm going to take my kid, get him. He had a really good report card, so I'm going
Mm,
to pick up some football cards with him and Pokemon cards, kind of as a reward.
yeah.
Doing that. So that's fun. Just kind of keeping track of those of my family and spending time with them. But personally, I do a lot on work on myself. So a lot of journaling, which I love. Reading. I'm a avid reader. Podcast as a podcaster, I listen to a ton of podcasts. So if
Hmm.
I'm doing the dishes, I'm listening to a podcast. If I'm weeding in my backyard, I'm listening to a podcast. So always studying the masters. From Joe Rogan to the All In podcast.
Hmm.
I try to listen to a variety of different kinds, and uh, and I practice yoga and meditation, and I I'm so glad I picked up that habit. I've tried to convince family members to do yoga and meditation, and most of the time I'm not successful.
Yeah.
So, but that has changed my life. And then the last thing is probably investing. Investing in stocks. I listen to investment podcast and cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, just to kind of diversify my portfolio. So those are a few things that I enjoy doing.
I love it. I love it. So, if a client wants to connect with you, how would they? What's the best ways to connect with you?
Yeah, they can go to systematicleader.co. .com was not available, so systematicleader.co. I would say check out my podcast, Systematic Leader. So if they like podcasts, I would
Yeah.
say start there. Listen to a couple podcasts. If they like what they hear, I would love to help them do a systems jam session. That's usually where we start. It's a series of questions that I kind of really refine to find out where they have bottlenecks, what's slowing them down, where are they having issues, and then where they have some opportunities. Yeah, systematicleader.co and Systematic Leader podcast.
Perfect. Well, I want to really thank you. Today, I think was a great podcast. I really enjoyed it. I love your insight. We have a lot of things that we think exactly like,
Mhm.
definitely in our management styles and things like that. So, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I had a blast. You asked great questions. I enjoyed myself.
Good. I appreciate it. I want to thank the audience. If you learned something today or laughed, Please tell somebody about this podcast. Again, Karl, thank you so much. This has been another exciting episode of Still City Growth. See you next time.